Good morning. Today is April 17th. As I am continuing to speak of a little bit of my personal history, but directly is the linkage where I have developed in 1974 during my master programs here at University of Wisconsin-Platteville. I have spoken about the communication dynamics and the communication analytica, which is an analysis of all our communications. But in that segment, there's the hosting, the holding sphere, the holding environment was college. So if you look at the work with the students, by teaching them the communication skills or identifying the communication dynamics with the analysis where students can easily identify what status they are in. It was a creation under a lot of pressure at the time when I working between UW-Platteville and UW Wisconsin-Milwaukee, when you're having a very big load of students. For example, 60 students, by the federal rules, they have to have a mandatory counseling session with the counselor or counseling psychologist, as I was. So all these were created by the necessity, and yet the assignments are a little bit ridiculous. Not knowing the time that we work 40 hours a week and how they're generating 68 conferences and meetings and counseling sessions. So in itself, that has allowed me to create something new. And unbeknown to me, this particular development of communication dynamics and the communication analytica in the educational sphere and the cultural sphere of education, 45 years later, today we have created almost a universal language, and the renaming the system to be the psychology of round and square. And I will continue to elaborate in more detail of the two changes from 1974 to 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, and also another movement onward from the psychology round and square, another new awareness that I have developed also called the conscientology, all about conscience. And in part, by this passage or voyage coming west from my Chinese origin, Shanghai via Macau, Hong Kong, and then to Brazil, and Brazil to the United States college. And in my last 45 years, in the business spheres, as you can see, the spheres is going to be very simple, very applicable. I think these cultural spheres or these spheres will give us some of the great learning, myself included. And so today, what I'm talking here in this particular segment, I am dedicated to my 45 years, still ongoing. Since 1977, we have opened our business called China West here in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And in this 45 years is almost another cross-cultural dimension of travel from a retail business to become a global distributors by our participation of the global fairs and in the industry in Hong Kong, in Japan, in Korea, in Europe, United States, Switzerland, Germany, and so on and so forth. So basically, I'm putting this 45 years of business is almost become a postmaster degree, my personal doctoral degree in the area, again, the cross-cultural spheres that I have developed. And more in particular, I am most grateful to the people in Brazil. Just before I even can speak of the subject matter called the garimpeiros, these are the gemstone explorers. These are the adventurers in all the stones you've seen and around the world, mentioning Brazil, with whatever representation company, big or small, just to name a few of their personal friends, with the Amsterdam sour, Julius sour, in the stores in Rio and around Brazil, and then H. Stern, another jewelry store in chains, in the entire segment. But behind the shops, when you talk about in the boonies, in the woods, in the mines, and predominantly in one region in Brazil, in a province called Minas Gerais, meaning general mines, and the biggest deposit of the iron ore, and the famous known company called Vale do Rio Doce, and all the other industrial mining happen in Brazil. And most of the gemstones are coming as a peripheral or the secondary finds in these major mines. So in sum, today's dedications, I have my page in Facebook called the GGMBA, Global Gem and Minerals Business Alliance. I have created that to be of value to the global trade, but most importantly, I felt like that I have benefited from the last 45 years of our personal economic growth, all involving with Brazil, with a small part where I have began operation and mining before in Uruguay with the amethyst. So this particular segment of today's talk is all about how a person like me, who have left the university in 77 and opening up our own business called China West here in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and then hopping into the area of colored gemstones. As always, my father, who's a native from Yuyao in the province of Zhejiang, and you get the linked Yuyao Zhejiang is upriver slightly from Shanghai. I was born in Shanghai out of a family of 7 children. My father was married previously with 3 children. Then my mother married my mother from Guangxi, origin of Guangdong, speaking fluent Cantonese. Then we had our own 4 siblings. I'm the youngest of all 7. In that regard is that many times in history, when we are speaking of what we do, why we do, the family exposure, my father went to school in Sorbonne. My father had his very, what I call glorious days by a young son like me, that any man who had traveled twice by way of the Siberian railway from Shanghai to Harbin, from Harbin to Vladivostok, north to Russia, and then on all the way to Moscow, Moscow to Berlin, Berlin to Paris. So my father had took off to Brazil in the early 50s, 51, 52, I'm not sure, because of 52, I was born in 48, but I was left behind in Shanghai with a wet nurse. And then eventually we joined the family in Hong Kong, Macau in 1952. So by the time I got to Hong Kong, my father had already departed to Brazil. And I put this in this segment of my business engagement in gemstones, and when our family, the 4 of us plus our mother, immigrated to Brazil in 1962, I was 14, and I lived between 52 and 62, 10 years in Macau. Get educated by the Roman Catholic Order of the Salesianos, or Don Bosco. Oftentimes, the way if the way I'm speaking, maybe in sometimes a little fragmented, I call it bits and pieces, the bits and pieces of cultures. What is more interesting will make the way I have created my personal awareness of the cultural spheres is almost like since I was born, I have a little bit of a pouch. And early on, the different tones of language, there's 4, 5, 6 dialects, because in our house, between the relatives, aunts and uncles from Guangxi, they speak their local dialect plus the local Mandarin at that time, heavily accented and very close to the Sichuan language. And my father never spoke fluently the Shanghai dialect per se, because he carried on with his own personal accents. All this kind of a tonality I'm speaking, the one who speaks most fluent Shanghai are my 2 sisters who are 6, 7 years older than me. But my brother and I were 1 year apart. Peter's older than me, and our name Peter and Paul was generated from our baptismal with the Roman Catholics, with the Jesuits. Again, it sounds like in my life is all the names are very colorful. We were not just baptized by anyone. We are from the mission of the Matteo Ricci from the Jesuits from Rome. 30 years later, I met up with Father Luis Ruiz, who is from Spain, who had gone to Cuba, and then back to Macau. And that we another story about the wonderful work, dedication, where Father Luis, in the last 30 years, had opened up in China over 10 leprosarium. Yes, meaning helping the lepers in China by creating schools and the residents close to the schools, so that the children were not separated. And he had done so in Guangdong, Guangxi, and all the way up to Sichuan in a very quiet demeanor, without any complicated issues with the Chinese government. And obviously, China today is extremely have improved economically dramatically. So I'm not sure what this leprosarium and their status and how they have been taken over by the Chinese government. But all in all, it's a very good deed. But what is interesting, the when I left Macau in 1962, speaking predominantly Cantonese and some English, of course, in the school and whatnot, and I sung in the Latin Mass with the Gregorian chant. I will repeat how all this language become so important because of the exposure of the Latin and Greek. Most importantly, singing given more assertion. The musicality had given me to have eventually embraced Portuguese, Spanish, a strong part of Italian, and comprehensively reading French. A little bit of a segment because I did not really get along with my dad in my teenage years in Brazil until I came to college. I never taken French, and to that I'm a little bit regretful, because I could have embraced French. Comes much easier with the rest of the other 3 and 4 Romance languages that I have managed to have captivated. A small segment, for example, when I met people from Galicia, northern Spain, it was in Barcelona, and they were complimenting me and say how good I am with my speaking of quasi Gallego, which is the language from Galicia in the northwest of Spain. But in actuality, the flow of the languages between Spain and Portugal and on the region, you pick up a little bit of the accent. And because my work between the Brazilians and the Uruguay border, and that also had accentuated my greater awareness of speaking Spanish. And of course, 40 years plus 50 years now in the United States, my engagement with the Hispanic population, the people, and other Latin American cultures, I'm pretty confident about my language. But all this in bits and pieces how do I develop this cultural sphere? It's like a cultural deposit. And then the exposure to the language, first domestically, Chinese in different tonality, Cantonese, language from Guangxi, language from Shanghai, the people, the workers who work with us from Pudong, from other area, and upriver to the city of Hangzhou and the city of Suzhou. So this aggregate of people and listening, hearing the tone. I guess the University of New York in Buffalo, some of the linguistic departments are starting paying attention for young people when they're exposed to different language and tones, and the likelihood for them to pick up another language with a greater facility is now it's being studied. And just for one example, my daughter Jennifer, when she was a baby, we have somebody helping us from Brazil, like a nanny, but she was more like a friend. So the reason she was up here to also to learn to speak English. During her time with Jennifer as a baby, and she spoke only Portuguese to Jennifer. And some years later, after Jennifer finished high school, spent 3 months in Brazil, and come back, now she's actually handling, I would say, a great 70-80% of the spoken Portuguese. She had lived with what I call my Brazilian family, the family of Murari, and with other siblings. My best friend, Moacir Murari, and then the 2 daughters and son. So Jennifer come back with a very good command of Portuguese, and then eventually went into Italy and come back. So this mezcla, this mixture, in Portuguese is called a salada mista. If you dare to speak, you can the accent and the pronunciation can be picked up very easily, and the people will help you with the grammar when you structure the sentence. It's not all that perfect. I will back to and trying to limit my segments in these programs. I use the Portuguese tones called Fala, or just speak, and I'm speaking about expressing my thankfulness to the country Brazil. I have created the greatest bond, the greatest education I received during my middle school and high school with the Salesians Order in Lorena, in the state of São Paulo. I would talk about that because that will be a huge segment. And also my relationship with the Murari family before I came up to college and my last 3 years in São Paulo. And all in all, what is another educational purpose within the framework of education is that people will always wondering how we have jumped ship from the academia. Kathy got her master's degree in communications with Marquette University, and I got my master's degree from UW Platteville. And 77, we had left the university, both decided to come into the area of the jewelry and gemstones. Of course, we are riding piggyback on the gradual opening of the China trade between China and U.S. And in that particular segment, my family have always collected, like any youngster, you have a curio cabinet, the Chinese carvings, some jades, some other heartstones, soapstones. But all in all, when you visualize, you have seen items as such. You grew to pay attention. My father used to smoke pipe around the house. In Brazil, we have 37 plus the cloisonné in French, the silver or copper wires plus enamels glazed over this clusters of the wires. So maybe the exposure in the whatever the middle class, upper middle class upbringing, I have the feel and touch because mother doesn't speak Portuguese, and some of the order to the maids in the house, the assignments. I had to tell them, translate that, make sure these ashtrays were, were clean. So from the living room, dining room, bedroom to the library, in the entire household, the presence of the ashtrays had always alerted me, oh, this is a wonderful item or art item. And from that, relating to the cabinets on the exposure to other expression of Chinese carvings and artifacts, I have always liked color stones. And also one of my early graduation at junior high, our junior high school gymnasium at that time is equivalent to the freshman class in the North American educational program. And I have already dedicated in wanting to join the Salesian order. And the main reason is such that my language has improved so much on my academic performance in the 2.5 years, 3 years in the city, Lorena. Lorena is right in the middle between Sao Paulo and Rio, 250 kilometers. Right in the middle is the Brazilian, the patron saint of Brazilian, the Aparecida do Norte. Is like Fatima from Portugal or Lourdes from France. So in that particular area, with our engagement, very sound education in learning from all aspects, from sports. We played soccer, basketball, volleyball. We belong to the band that march around all the cities in this region. Sao Paulo, Rio is called Vale de Paraíba. All this participation, learning how to type, learning how to sing, 6-7 tones of the Gregorian chants, where I've learned earlier in Macau when I was from 8 to 14. All the benefits at that particular time when I finished junior high school, by listening of the Salesian missionaries and their travel to the region further west of Sao Paulo, in the western region, heading toward Bolivia, but in that region called the province called Mato Grosso, where the native tribes called the Chavantes. The Salesians order today commanding the best education and the best cultural retention of many of the Brazilian natives with their missions. It's no longer a mission of just about evangelizing and conversion these natives into become Roman Catholics, but much more than that. And they are heading back to a direction guided by some of the mandates I share with in Brazil in 2008. What a year with the Wall Street. I was interpreting the Vatican's mandate to the native tribes in northern part of the Brazil Amazon, the last city of Amazon called São Gabriel de Cachoeira, where the bishop sung like me, an ethnic Chinese with Shanghai origin and Cantonese spoken after 1948, 1950. And he's called the Obispo dos Índios. He's the bishop of the Indians. I went up to that region is because Bishop Song, I was just told, had Parkinson's, and he is getting weaker. And Bishop Song is one of the catalysts shared with me when I was 16, wanting to go to continue my high school with the seminary schooling of the Salesians. One of the main draws, not about being religious or being joining a priesthood, yes, with all the Greek learning, because the learning in Lorena for the 3.5 years, and my curiosity was set up on this native Brazilians and their musicality, their songs and their dance, and that is how I had made that decision at 16, 17. But at the end, just a very simple response from my mother say, women can and not boys. And knowing my mother was having a difficult time in the adjustment with the family and the economics and whatnot, I just become very obedient, and I have since passed on. But during this last 45 years, and I have visited the Yanomamis up in the border of Venezuela, and I have literally engaged business-wise with the Cintas Largas in Rondônia, which is in the northwest of Brazil. And there are still amazing things when I just discover the Portuguese, be that in Rondônia with the Cintas Largas, or I went up to the São Gabriel de Cachoeira, Rio Negro, north of Brazil and Venezuela, and I visited Bishop Song. But what attracted me at that time, there's a language group that I was totally curious called Ninkatu, which when the Jesuits came to Brazil, the priest called Anchieta, he's basically a priest coming on from the Canary Islands, and he probably speaking with an accent with a bilingual Portuguese and Spanish. But that particular region, what I was amazing, that Ninkatu had actually consolidated over 10, 20 tribes in the region. And I thought that the region, when I see Bishop Song, along with two other retired bishops in the region, then we can talk and speak and share about the richness of how they have composed a language and share up and down the river in the region with over 100 tribes. So that was the reason I gone up in the same week of a religious event of the 3 days celebrating Anna. I did not even know Anna was the mother of Mary, the mother of Christ. And so during that celebration, in the midst of the Mass, all of a sudden we had read a mandate coming from the Vatican, and the link I have with this so-called catechism, the training work with the sister called Filomena. She's Spanish, but she was spent many years in the region. In the midst of the Mass, at the end of the Mass, he said there was a mandate coming up from Vatican, is to encourage us to work with the natives with their multiculturalism. And there's two words called, in Portuguese, it's called inculturação, I-N, inculturation. And the other word was enculturação, E-N, is to encultured. And she put me in the midst, and the way she said it, we have the presence of Dr. Paulo Yi. Well, that is the way they pay respect to anyone with any kind of respectability. I was not a doctor. I only got my master's. Nevertheless, I explain. But I share with these natives. There was 150 and more of the natives that working as a catechist in the Roman Catholic Church. The catechist used to be priests in my time. Now they appointing the laymen to continue to advocate, to address the issues of the church. And I was kind of stunning because the audience, like over 200 people, and the Mass, over the 3 bishops still sitting on their seats. And what happened when she said, I think Paul can be enlightening us because his study about psychology and linking to cultural psychology, the anthropology, he will be shed some light. And right in the middle of the Mass, I was totally taken and say, whoa, wait a minute. But however, and I shared this, how I have I managed to come out okay. Because the morning before that, I was in town. When I first came into town, politically or not, I have a full interview with Don Songi in a city radio. perhaps it's just a, after all these many years, and some may not know where I stand religiously or educationally, but knowing that I am into the cross-cultural studies and embracing cultural anthropology, he would like to see me speak to the public, maybe half an hour interview, and then we came back to do what we do. In the middle of this program, after the church, and one of the most articulate speaking Tucano, which is a tribe that shares between Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia in the river region. And he just got up speaking very eloquently and say, yes, we would like to see Po Yi, to show us the eloquence of the understanding of the words of enculturation and enculturation. Well, I think it's always pressure, always make us to be creative, inventive, and I try my best, and I done my best. And first of all, I said I would just went to because the internet is not doing well in the parish of San Gabriel, Cachoeira. I went to the NGO a couple blocks away, viewing that I received in the cold shoulders from the NGO natives. And I broke the ice. I said, good morning, may I use your internet with my laptop? Well, in that particular time, I was enculturated. I was learning. I said, the Brazilians were very friendly. We shook hands. We tapped on the shoulder, the abraço, like one. Oh, finally, the natives with me, the students, the 3 or 4 of them, and they showed me their name. And all the names were written in their tribal languages. I'm just making it up. It sounds almost like my name is John Akinamoa, and then with a slash Natuna. So all the names are not the traditional name in the US called the anglicized, but in the Portuguese side we call it, shaping into the Portuguese names. Many of them adapt the Portuguese last name. So in all this exchange, I used the service. I share half an hour with NGO groups, with the not so friendly native Brazilians, in knowing that I am with the parish, with the Roman Catholic Church. But in this particular time, the presentation, I highlighted. I asked for the board, a blackboard or chalkboard, and I just responded to this sergeant, very articulate, very well-spoken Portuguese sergeant, and said, okay. I said, this morning, I went across to the NGO, it's almost like an enemy camp. I used their service, and I had my first session of enculturation, where I've learned with their name. I kind of read it out. And let me comparing here. We have over 125 participants with this service, post-mass catechism. I said, all your last names are here. For example, Souza, recommending American Portuguese band music writer Souza, S-O-U-Z-A. Oliveira, from olive trees. Gonzalez, Fernandez, Sintra, Albuquerque. I said, all these names are Hispanic and Portuguese names. None of the name here as I had received from the last 5 native Brazilians within the tribal area of this region. So I have just learned there is a distinction here. But what is most importantly, what Vatican's coming down as a mandate to ask for the teachers and the teaching staff to encourage all of you to learn more about your culture and your past. And take this example. I am here for the whole month as a retreat, and I am being enculturated. Every day, I share the learning with 8 priests in the neighborhood. Well, the neighborhood meaning up and down river in their parishes. They're coming and going during this weekend and other times. And I was very much inspired by Padre Osvaldo Capianci. He will come up to my name in the future and promise to taking him to China with me. Capianchi, as you can see, I just read the name Capianchi. It's like Casa Pianchi, or the White House, and his name is Osvaldo. So Padre Osvaldo and I have shared many, many studies and reading on Paulo Freire, and also with the famous Brazilian cultural anthropologist Darcy Ribeiro. The 6 weeks I spent in this region of the Amazon, in the Rio Negro, in the city of San Gabriel, is everyday learning. So I told my audience of the native Brazilians, I said, I am learning every day about you and about San Gabriel when I'm visiting Dom Bispo Song. On the blackboard, that's like writing my name, Paulo, Paul, by English, and Paulo, P-U-L-O in Portuguese, and my last name is Y-I-H. Immediately after I wrote down the Y-I-H, I put the writing in Chinese. Y-I-H, yeah. Today's, my last name in China will be spelling as Y-E or Y-E-H. I wrote down on the board, I said, Paulo, or Paul, was the name given to me when I was baptized in Macau in 1956, 58, around that time. And then I write down also Bishop Song's Chinese name. While I'm writing it, my eyes are looking at the three bishops who are still sitting in the postmass on the chairs. I said, we have our name, but we have not neglected or denied our name in Chinese. So whatever Rome is asking for the church to do is to be reminding all of you of your heritage. I think this is a wonderful thing. And so the process about the two words of enculturation, E-N, and inculturation, with I-N, had allowed me, after 2008, created two more terms, which I put in deculturation, deculturação. Basically, you can say destroying cultures. Talk about history in America. Talk about the history of the Jewish diaspora. Talk about the Chinese Opium War. How many races, how many countries got devastated, in a very cruel way. Or talk about the massacre in Nanjing by the Japanese, 300,000 Chinese perished. Or we can talk about the disease, the illness, the causes of the Native American faced over this long period of the European settlement coming into America. It's not about right or wrong, but we talk about in the Latin language, what I appreciate the most from the decultura. So enculturação, I created deculturação, deculturalization, and also I added one more, which acculturation. Acculturation is just like alienating, and sometimes in many areas we know of the presence of another subgroup, but they are never part of us. We are not engaged. We're not. In so many ways, not just about the United States, but I've seen it in other countries that people come in the lower status, they come in labor, work. So in this 1 month staying in Brazil, I have acquired 4 new vocabulary. And only a month and 2 later, when I created deculturation, I was reading the book I brought back from Brazil called O Povo Brasileiro, Brazilian People, written by Darcy Ribeiro. Somewhere in that page, I also found Darcy, one of the best, interesting cultural anthropologists from Brazil, had written the word deculturation. So in other words, I thought I have invented the word, but never dare we assume that somebody had not also created the similar wordings. So I guess learning is also a very humbling act. I'm going to 39 minutes now. I have not yet touched the subject matter of this segment, dedicating my thankfulness to the Brazilian people, more importantly to the the gem traders. And in this segment, the gem trader or the gem explorers, the gem adventurers who brought many, many stones and many, many beautiful colors who had enriched my life economically, also had beautified many women with the gemstone. The art of cutting in Germany had took me to Ito Oberstein, took me to Kofu in Japan, the sculpture in Japan, and the sculpture eventually in China. I worked with 6 Chinese arts and craft divisions from Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Tianjin, Guangzhou, and exporting gemstones, agates from Brazil to China, and seeing my product in the Canton Fair that from a lowly $200 stones, maybe 150 stones, that was being bought by the customers for 2,000, 3,000 after stones being carved out with the dragons, dipping. The culture of the my business in this 45 years was part of my, you may call it postmasters, maybe I'm digging my own doctoral degree, but never, degree is just a degree as a paper. But in my 45 years with engagement with Brazil, with Bolivia, with Peru, with Chile, with Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and whatever little stone coming up from Argentina, so the rhodochrosite, the pink stones, and we have the 2 color by color, ametrine, amethyst, and yellow and green color are from the region of Bolivia, who had dominated for at least 10 to 15 years, till the stone diminishes, vanishes. Almost every stone, we can name a town and a place, or somebody found it, and by its crazy incident. For example, one of the very beautiful emerald found in the region of Brazil in the state of Minas called Nova Era, called Cantagalo. Maybe just come up to a very short surface time. And this story is interesting because this one man who hated his neighbors, they're quite distant, they all get good acreage. The rooster, maybe singing too early, 4 or 5 in the morning, and always on the peak of a hill, of a column. So one day he decided, I'm going to shoot this rooster. He picked out a shotgun, went out, 5 in the morning, picked up the gun, shot, bing, bang, boom, whatever happened. And then the walked away the next morning. Either his son or his wife walk up to the bluff between the neighbor and here. And the wife said, do you see the mica? Now, in general, we mine stones in that region. When mica, or sometimes kaolin, white substance, shows, that means that something must be with the mica. Well, 2 weeks later, there were 20 tunnels digging under this bluff, this hill, and producing some of the beautiful, beautiful emeralds and good sizes with clarities. In short, with our work and assistance, he became I won't call it a millionaire, but he had over $800,000 by leasing the holes to let people to venture licensing to mine his place. He charged them a flat fee, $20,000, and then takes a share of the 10% when the stones are sold in the rough forms. And from the rough forms, you can recut it and get a higher yield. But to make the story short, it became an economic center, small center, but this man became a quasi-millionaire in that short few weeks' time. And the mine is called Canta Gallo. The mine is called the Singing Rooster. And what I'm sharing with you is that in the midst of all the mystery and glamour and like the old days, when I was a kid reading Alibaba and the thieves and whatnot, yes, there are many, many troublesome, difficult shenanigans, conniving, deception, manipulation, names, brands, whatever. But in the midst of it all, I value the sort of spontaneity. I value the sort of intuition that I've shared with many of these Brazilians None of them knew that I have a degree in psychology, and I have already created the system of the communication system with the dynamic and the analytical. But the story going on and the events that have gone on, I would like to express time and again of the why in the midst of the business, the sense of wonderment. I can pick up from a shoeshine boy in the morning and say, "Sio Paulo, o que você está comprando? What are you buying?" He didn't have any idea that he would say, "O senhor está comprando verde, pedra verde. Are you buying greenstones?" Well, that can be tourmalines, that can be emeralds, that can be greenish aquamarine, beryl in the region. But he just say, "Be very careful," because I just shine shoes for the last 6 people. They're all coming up from that particular area, Marambaya. Well, by knowing the name and so I know that's probably not emerald, but in fact, it was green tourmalines, And what happened? He alerted me by me offering the purchase in the open purchase. I had done something very audacious. From day one, I buy in the middle of the plaza or in the piazza, basically in the area church front square of the town. I look at the stone, I like it, I know, and other people say you have to be careful. You should buy in the office, quiet. Well, I do both, but by me getting up in the morning for the coffee, get my shoe shine, waving at people, I say I'm looking for this particular stone. I'm basically announcing what I'm buying. I have a short day. I never lasted more than 4 days, 3 days. I'm out of town. With a backpack, what I needed, I'm gone. So in this way, showing my system of purchase, it's no longer I had the whole bag. It was never secret. I'm the most open purchasing buyer in the middle of the road. In fact, in front of the cars, you can spread it out 50 to 100,000 package of the value of stones, and I will pick 2 stones, maybe worth 1, 3, 4,000. But the entire audience got to know, what is Paul buying today? What is he buying on this trip? And there are many fun and intelligence. Take aquamarine. I buy stones that other people ask me. People say, what is the best skill of buying? What's the best buy? How can you manage doing so well? I always said there's no skill. The best buy is when before you even come down to Brazil, I had 2 phone calls from Tokyo by way of Los Angeles with the Japanese asking me, "Paul, if you can pick up any aquamarine in our mindset, the scale of 7 to 10, in the sizes between 10 and 12 carats, no bigger than 15, 17. I'll take them all. I trust you. I know your taste. You have a good mind, and the cuts got to be good, not too thick. And we, Japanese, we don't like an octagonal size. We want the stone to be rectangular." Well, I went down. The first buy I bought 40,000, and I know I'll make 20,000 out of this deal. 1.5 markup, just a very, very lowly, very small and humble margin. So I make $20,000 on that particular parcel at 610 stones. 2 stones are over 17. 18. 1 stone is 20. Guess what? I have a retail shop, and I know my German friends. I know in that particular parcel of gems, how much will go to this Japan and Tokyo, how many will stay in the US, and what else do I will ship to Hong Kong or moving to some of the larger jewelers in Florida and California. The trips I've made from a shoeshine boy cost me 50 cents to cut. I always tip him with $1 or more. He knew nothing about color stones, and yet from his heart, he wanted to give me a good warning about what stones are being shown. And that is a part, the open trade, that's so different than my other culture, like the Chinese or the Japanese And I'm not putting this down. I'm just saying I have the glow and the glory to walk into the middle of the town. I can buy, if I have the cash on hand, I can buy $20 million worth. So this is one part of my thankfulness and my gratitude to the garimpeiros, to my friends in Brazil in the industry of gem trade. Some have offices, some have huge minings, some big companies. I just mentioned one name, Asceno Tavares, one of the major suppliers of the aquamarine for many years, had always given me the gentlest respect and sharing what we know. And we met also in Tucson and other gem shows that we have always been of great friendships. And in this process of 45 years learning with the colored gemstone business, Brazil was absolutely fun, with great leisure, pleasurable. If you like the Brazilian steak churrasco, the churrascarias, God, that's almost out my, instead of give me my daily meals and give my daily churrasco, that's endless. The rice is good, the chicken hearts, and doesn't matter where I go in Minas. Food, the drinks, guaraná, including my children who have also fallen in love with. So the all in all, my 45 years of my business, which I'm still conducting, we make some modification involving another aspect of the colored gemstones and minerals specimens. Now we're into the construction material called quartzite, which is the higher grade of the granite, working along with China, working from China with Indonesia, the housing business now in the city building in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and all the more. I'm basically should be retiring, not working. But this part of the technology, granting many of us to going back to the Greek history tellers, be that Homer with his Iliad and Odyssey, most of the Greek philosophers, thinkers, Chinese alike, the orators, the speakers speak, the scribers write. With the use of the technology we have today with YouTube, eventually the CC caption, I can have my language to be dubbed or to be translated into almost any languages. With the speed of the quantum tabulation calculation, and with the totally viable AI, we are back to the era or new period where we can using our speaking skills and to develop richer contents. And with my CCI development, I intend to have every single of my presentations eventually into written forms and into documents where I can pass and share with my colleagues. But in my page of the Gemexplorer under GGMBA, just GGMBA in Facebook, I have every intention to produce more footage as I am doing today and move on to educate the Brazilians on their seller side and to make the Brazilian, this time in point, not to suffer any more of the cultural dissonance because they have not the language skill, they may not have the equipment skill, but there's something I would like to do by shaping and forming the society, the garimpeiros, maybe the international gem traders, dealers from Asia, from Europe, from America, from any country, that we can help these educational and technology isolated individuals, these garimpeiros, to find a new platform to move their goods around the world. And this is my intention. And this will be one of the many tapes I will also be posting onto the GGMBA on Facebook, and plus the other platform called Conscientization, And also I created one other platform called I, the Monkey, in Cantonese, I, the Malau. And that will be somewhat of relating to my psychology in the Freudian superego, ego, and id, which is the biological id, is the self-ego, and then the superego is cultural. I have just noticed that my outer ego, the role modeling, the what I've been following in my mindset since I was a child, is this famous Monkey King story. A monkey disciple who followed the monk in the Tang Dynasty, who traveled all the way to Tibet, to India, and in this particular storyline called the Journey to the West. And I think in the way I'm putting it, it will continue to inspire many, many Chinese. And I have carried the spirit of the monkey ever since I was 6, 7 years old. And one of the reasons to have this courage and audacity to go from Sao Paulo, riding a 24 hours to Minas, to the city of De Filotoni and Governador Valadares, in one of the most treacherous roads and highways, used to be known to the Chinese businessman is the highway of the widowmakers. And I did it. And I did it with total audacity, jumping out of the cultural sphere of education and went into the gem trade that gave me the total flexibility, mobility, the global travel. There's no limit in what I have done in the gem trade. And that part of the incentive motivation is still coming down to the cultural roots by my learning, earning, emulating the Monkey King. I will stop here. Thank you.